And our last speaker for the evening is David Hobbs, who is an MIT alum. So we're excited to have you, especially for that reason. And of course, a cybersecurity expert with more than 18 years experience in cybersecurity and network engineering. Thanks, David.
So good evening, everybody. I'm David Hobbs. I'm an evangelist for Radware, which means I fly around the world. I meet with interesting people. We talk about cybersecurity. I meet with a lot of the computer emergency response teams for world governments, financial institutions, stock exchanges. And this evening, I'm going to talk a little bit about the economics of cyber attacks. So we're going to talk about a bit of a historical context. And does hacking pay? We're going to dive into Darknet and take a look at the cyber attack marketplace, right? How do hackers actually do what they do? And then we're going to take a look at the economics of defenses and really take a look at a reality check. So as a professional, you know, what does it really mean economically for you to be able to defend yourself against, obviously from the last two presentations, kind of a scary world? So a little over 100 years ago, they invented horse's carriage. Let's see, is everything drawing right? It's good. And the horseless carriage was neat, but in order for this idea to take off, you needed a couple things to have happen. So you had to have roads. You had to have the infrastructure to create an assembly line. And so Ford comes out and says, okay, we're going to fix this. We're going to make some roads. We're going to make an assembly line. And then we had the ideal economic conditions. And what this did was it put horses out of the marketplace. Right? There's still a little bit of horses around today in our society, but you know, everybody used to have a horse, and we don't have horses really anymore. You know, I don't take my horse downtown to the office any longer, and I don't think anybody in this room does either. So cyber attack has kind of reached this economic tipping point. There's more resources available. There's more targets that are paying out the money, and the level of maturity has driven the efficiency to being able to do this, right? So we've turned a corner economically for cyber attack. So I know that some people take a look at the movies and they have an idea in their head of what a hacker might look like, you know, and the reality is that the people sitting around the table talking about an idea with a computer in front of them, those are really kind of what the hackers may look like, as opposed to the guy with the hoodie on, you know, the lone wolf, you know, the I'm anonymous member guy. Right? If you're going to make money, you have to do it and run it like a business. And that's what people are doing today. So they structure their organizations together and they say, how are we going to execute a plan? Who is going to be the brains behind it? Or how do we collaborate in terms of being able to figure out what are the things that are worth value? How are we going to exfiltrate data? What's it going to be worth? How is the execution going to happen? And how do they essentially come up and make money? Right? It's a business, and that's the thing, is that the lone wolf idea isn't really true. So Ponymon says that the average attacker earns approximately a quarter of the salary that an average IT person makes. Right? That's taking into account the people that are working in call centers being outsourced in other countries to call and pretend that they're Microsoft or that they're the IRS. Saying, you owe me a bunch of money, and if you don't buy me a bunch of Target gift cards right now, the feds are going to come and arrest you, right? We've all had that call, right? They're the low-paid wage workers, but the people that are actually running the call center, they're the ones that are making the millions. And that's the thing, is nobody's trying to actually be average in this marketplace. They want to become above average. So the monetization of what people are doing, right? Intellectual property. We look at the Equifax breach the other day, right? And that is the gold mine. That is worth so much money for criminals out there to commit identity theft, take out credit cards in your name, start doing fraud, carding operations, right? It's worth way more than just credit card numbers themselves. In the Darknet, they sell credit card numbers for about $9 to $10 a piece with high limits on them. But the PII records, the personal identifying information, those could be $75 a piece. And we'll take a look at the marketplaces and how people are selling these records and how they're actually exploiting it to take financial advantage over the companies that may have had a data breach. So Blue Cross Blue Shield, they lost about 400,000 records from Georgia, sold on the Darknet marketplace for about $350,000. That's what that database was worth. That's what it was selling for. Granted, I did this slide when Bitcoin was not worth what it is today. You know, this is a bit of an older slide, so I apologize if I'm not current with the Bitcoin price. Another healthcare database gets breached, right? And they sell 210,000 records on Darknet for $175,000. Another healthcare breach, right? And granted, the HITECH Act came into account, I think it went active a few years ago, where basically it could be a $1.5 million fine leveraged against people that are carrying healthcare records. Now, when you take this into consideration, a children's hospital in Dallas, Texas got a $6 million fine, right? Seattle Children's Hospital, near and dear to all of our hearts, is a charity, right? It's run by generous benefactors that kind of keep the thing going. It's not a for-profit hospital. So how can a children's hospital get a $6 million fine? Well, they lost a laptop and they lost a cell phone that had medical records on it. And as in essence, the regulators came in and said, you were negligent and therefore you get a $6 million fine. Now the hackers know this. So now they get a little bargaining power. They say, well, we've got your data. Do you want to pay a bunch of money and we won't rat you out that we took your data? Or do we start selling it around in Darknet and then you're going to get a fine and all the people are going to get their identity compromised? So this is where ransom attacks start to come in. These are the kinds of situations that we work with customers regularly to have to deal with this kind of a situation. So Bitfinex, their exchange, they're in Hong Kong now, they wound up getting a DDoS attack and they go offline and the exchange, or the price of Bitcoin plummets. Somebody broke into them and stole $72 million worth of Bitcoin. Now that of course can move the marketplace. Same thing with the DDoS that happens to them pretty regularly. And so they wound up offering a recovery reward of about $3.5 million to figure out who stole the money. So there's economics in this. The hackers in the marketplace are saying, hey, this is really super easy. These exchanges, pretty easy to break into. Bitcoin, reasonably anonymous. There's a lot of debate on whether or not it's anonymous currency or not, since most of the transactions are being tracked globally. Then you get into the problem, how do you tumble, how do you money launder, but we'll talk a little more about that later. This is what the hackers are doing. So over 430 booter and stressor websites have been available for people to go out and actually just go rent. So for as little as $6, people can DDoS people with a 5 to 10 gigabit DDoS attack, right? This is where compromised cameras living on a botnet are conscripted into a little DDoS botnet. And somebody says, I'm going to rent the botnet, and then I'm going to attack somebody, and then I'm going to send them an email and say, you either pay a ransom or you're going to go offline. Now, an interesting story, I was in Korea a couple of months ago, and one of the internet service providers wound up getting a ransomware malware that came through, locked up all their servers, and essentially they were faced with the idea that they have to pay a ransom or they're going to go out of business. The Korean government says, you're not to pay this ransom. It's forbidden. They said, no, we're going to go out of business and we're going to lose all of our customers. Don't you understand? They said, no, it's forbidden. So they negotiated with the people that had all their servers locked up to make 3 installment payments equaling $1 million. And they paid it. They got their servers back. Goes out in the news. So now it's blood in the water all over Asia. Everybody goes, ooh, Korean ISPs paid $1 million out. 2 days later, 64 of the financial institutions start getting emails saying, you either pay $50,000 in ransom or we're coming for you with a botnet army. About a third of them paid. Because they say, if you don't pay the $50,000 up front, tomorrow it's going to be $75,000.
Can you tell the story about the CNC infrastructure? You know that? Same CNC infrastructure for Sony, same infrastructure for, that's a very good line.
Yeah, so there's actually a number of CNC infrastructures running right now. We installed the Mirai botnet and did the talk at Nanog about the insides of the Mirai botnet and what that means. Essentially, the Mirai botnet conscripted a bunch of cameras And there's a couple of command and control infrastructures out there. Some of them are running on Ubiquiti wireless antennas because they used UBNT as the username and UBNT as the password. Very hard to guess, right? Ubiquiti Network to UBNT. Okay, got it. Hard password. Those command and control infrastructure essentially are running in a bunch of wireless carriers all over the place, and then these cameras can actually reach into the command and control infrastructure and they can get their instructions of who to attack. This is where the DNS water torture attack came from that took down Dyn DNS. It went down for 3 days, they lost 16,000 customers. Just like that, right? 16,000 customers, yeah, it's not that big of an attack really, when you think about it. I mean, it's devastating. It's really what it is. The carriers looking at having a bunch of cameras running so much traffic over the intercontinental fiber links that they're starting to wonder, can we actually pass traffic from country to country? Right? Some people are saying it was a terabit of bandwidth, right? Brian Krebs says it was a terabit of bandwidth. We only saw about 650 gigabits. That's all. The 650 gigabits, you know, it's pretty good. You know, so then the next iteration of this, of course, is BrickerBot, where we wrote some honeypots. My coworker Pascal, that covers the EU, starts writing his own honeypot and starts seeing these weird commands come in and starts tracing it down. We go, okay, if the Mirai botnet is trying to spread, then, and it pings a device on a Ubiquiti antenna, it now jumps in, tries to brute force its way into the camera, gets root, overrides the whole file system, and then reboots so that the camera is completely dead. Right? It's called a permanent denial of service. And the janitor says, I'm doing the world a favor. I'm committing digital chemotherapy to the internet. He just attacked an ISP in India and took 2 million cable modems offline as a warning shot that you either fix your remote management and your cable modems, or I'm going to destroy all the equipment on your network. And all of your customers are going to go offline permanently. This is who the janitor is. This is, you know, these are the actors in the space and what the kinds of things that they're doing. So,
have you heard of Beezers? The guy Beezers? This comes with the seeds, your Beezers. Kill them all, for God will know his own.
Yeah.
So their motto in Latin is, rip them all, and God will know his own.
Yeah, but the problem,
I know.
the problem with bricking equipment and destroying people's personal property just because they may not necessarily have the wherewithal to patch their home equipment or to patch their camera, or they bought from a manufacturer that's not patching their gear, is what do you do about Samsung? Right, 40 root vulnerabilities in their operating system that goes across watches, tablets, TVs, smart TVs, everything else. And I don't want to pick on Samsung. They're a wonderful technology company and people really enjoy their products, but there's vulnerabilities out there. You know, so you're like, what, are you going to stop at cameras? Why don't we go after TVs? Why don't we go after smartwatches? Why don't we go after tablets? Why don't we go after the phones? Just like the new vulnerability that's going after phones today over Bluetooth, right? All the Linux-based phones, the Microsoft-based phones, the only one that didn't get hit this time was the iPhone, right? Maybe it's, you know, maybe there's something there, maybe there's not, but, you know, these kinds of things are happening, right? Do you want the janitor to do digital chemotherapy on your $1,000 phone? I don't. I'd be mad, extremely mad, right? So 1 in 7 of the companies that we've talked to that provide us with information said that they've had a ransom attack in the past year. In the US, they pay $7,500 to just go away, right? Do I want to risk the latency on my website? Do I want my e-commerce site slowing down? How much is that going to cost me? Or do I just pay a ransom? Do I just negotiate with these idiots and do I pay them? In the UK, they pay about £22,000. In Asia Pacific, because of the blood in the water, they're paying 40, 50, 60,000 bucks in a crack. They don't even blink an eye, right? Do I want to be publicly embarrassed or do I pay? Right? Do you have the security controls in place? Right? This is the kind of marketplace where, you know, the cyber attackers go, we don't even have to have any skill. They can just go into a darknet marketplace, right? There's the Armada Collective who's been doing DDoS ransom letters for forever, and this is some of their real emails sending to customers saying you pay us. And there's another attack going on right now. We've published an ERT alert about it, Emergency Response Team Alert, and it's publicly available through our website. But you know, there's another group of people that are going out and they're sending hundreds of thousands of emails out there to go on a phishing expedition. These guys might not even be legit. But do you take the chance if they are? What does it look like if you have a large botnet attacking you? And it's not going to be fun. So the shadder brokers, they're the ones that hacked the NSA's tools, you know, all their backdoors and their toolkits, and they went out and tried to sell it for $572 million. Said, you want all the NSA's toys? Here they are, $572 million. Now, no, you know, it had to have been bought by a state agency, right? Because I don't know too many criminals with that kind of dough laying around to buy hacking tools, right? I think they'd have retired by then. So no government stepped up and said they're going to buy the NSA's toolkit. So they decided to release it on the internet for free. And they did it in February. And as a result, they're now starting to offer it as a subscription service. If you want to pay for a monthly subscription service, you can start buying zero-day exploits into popular manufacturers' products and can start to wreak havoc on a monthly basis for fun and profit, right? So they do the leak. Forrester says that about $180 billion in loss to US technology companies because of this. Now, think about this. In March, the exploits went out there. All the security companies took a look. They all said what they should have done. They said, we're going to patch things. We're even going to patch Windows XP. And we said, we're never, ever, ever promise, cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, I'm never patching Windows XP ever again. Right? And they did this years ago. Microsoft said, okay, we're going to patch Windows XP because of this vulnerability here. We're going to go back on what we said and the stand that we took, and we're going to patch Windows XP, right? So Wannacry comes out a few months ago, takes out 172 countries over 24 hours, just like that. Why? Because nobody patched. Right? It's right to your point. Nobody patched. Have we changed? We haven't. So the funny thing is even after Wannacry goes all over the news, all over the media, everybody talks about it, then the Linux flavor comes out a couple weeks later, and 2 of the 64 antivirus companies caught it in the first 4 days. Only 2. I'm not going to name who they are because that wouldn't be fair to say who's more awesome than the others. But only 2 of them caught it. But the thing is everybody could have patched. And this variation says, well, we'll just go ahead and we'll take over the eternal blue hole, and we'll just make all these Linux boxes Bitcoin miners. Instead of like spreading around and encrypting and doing ransom attacks, they'll just mine Bitcoin with all your CPU power. Yes?
So I think a really great discussion among the 3 of us could be the kind of elephant in the room about this, right? Mm. So this is, without question, the FSB.
Yes.
Like, I wouldn't even say it's not a question.
And I'm going to address this. I'm going to address this in a different way. And I'm going to talk about a paper that MIT and Capgemini put out in 2011 about digital transformation. If you haven't read the paper, I highly recommend it, right? 69% of the C-level executives globally consider digital transformation crucial to their survival. What does that mean? How do you stop Amazon.com and Uber and JP Chase and some of these other people that have actually figured out how to automate and move faster and do things in a way that gives them a strategic advantage, right? Get the human out of the way. Get us out of the decision-making process. We'll make the decisions, and then we're going to move forward in a different direction. So there's a cyber attack marketplace out there. There's a DDoS coming, I can guarantee it. You guys know that guy from the commercial? It's an e-commerce site for criminals. It's found on Darknet. Most of the time people are going out through Tor exit nodes and through relays. It's not necessarily go get onto a web browser and you're going to get to Darknet. You got to do a little more and use I2P or Tor or the Tor browser to get yourself out into Darknet to find these places. Most of the markets are available public. Some of them require you to commit a crime for membership. So they'll say, here's a vulnerable site, go break in, we'll give you access because we know that you're a trusted criminal. Or whatever their logic is for that. And of course, they use Bitcoin as their currency. So everything's accessible, it's easy to use. They do things as a service. Everything that you need is there, right? It's like going and signing up for Amazon EC2 for hosting. Super simple. So everything's fully available. There's a variety of marketplaces out there, AlphaBay, Valhalla, Hansa. Now, granted, AlphaBay was just The owner was just arrested in Bangkok about a month ago. He churned about $1 billion in Bitcoin doing money laundering, and he used his Hotmail account tied to him. That's how they caught him. And he was going to be brought back to the United States to face the same kind of penalties that the Dread Pirate Roberts got, which was life in prison. And he was found dead in his jail cell the next day, so we the taxpayers don't have to pay for that, and it is what it is. He's no longer with us. But they captured the marketplaces. They've used it as a honeypot to figure out who's doing their drug dealing, credit card selling, attacks on other people to try to capture and dragnet more people that are using these marketplaces. But some of these marketplaces, they're still there, right? I mean, these are a couple of ads that you can see right up there on the screen. So they've got services, the VDOS, Bang Stressor, Shenron. These are all DDoS botnets that people can rent. They have everything preloaded, attack scripts, amplify lists, hijacking. They've got hacker forums, places where everybody goes and just talks about what they want to do. This is where the author of the Mirai botnet spent a bunch of his time perfecting how deadly to make that botnet, talking to other programmers. So how do they market their services? Stunt hacking. Probably the best stunt hackers in my recent history, in the last 10 years that I've looked at, was the Lizard Squad. Sony Pictures gets hacked. They're releasing a movie that's offensive to North Korea. They wind up getting all their motion picture information stolen. They wind up losing a bunch of credit card information, and then there was death threats that if they released the movie on Christmas Day, they were going to blow up the theaters and do another Batman shooter, and Sony Pictures decided not to theatrically release the interview on Christmas Day. President Obama says, I really wish that you would have talked to me before bowing down to these people, and that you wouldn't have done this. And so as a result, we helped do a digital release of it on Christmas Day. So it went out on YouTube, Amazon, Apple, a bunch of the other people, so that they could actually let people buy the movie for $3 and watch it. And on Christmas Day, what happened? Microsoft goes offline, Sony Pictures goes offline, PlayStation Network offline, Xbox Live Network offline. 18 seconds, crashed all their equipment. I have friends over there that have been kind enough to tell me exactly what went wrong. And essentially, it was people's home cable modems that were conscripted onto a botnet that were launching DDoS attacks against these two companies. And up on Twitter pops the Lizard Squad. And all these little kids are like, you Lizard Squad guys, you're so mean, I can't play my games on Christmas, right? Because they wrecked Christmas for a bunch of little kids across the country. So everybody's talking to them on Twitter, and everybody's thinking, oh my God, is it North Korea? Even President Obama says, we're going to deal with them in our own time. We're going to retaliate in our own time and in our own place. So a couple weeks later, they pop up and they actually start offering their botnet for rent. Everybody's like, oh, maybe this isn't a state-sponsored attack. It's a bunch of people that hijacked the news and an event to create an even bigger event for themselves and become a household name, and everybody started to know who the Lizard Squad was. They made a bunch of money renting their botnet. They made a lot of money renting their botnet out.
Can you say the address out loud? Just say it out loud. Say the address of their DDoS platform web address. Say it out loud. I'll say it out loud.
Go ahead.
Stressor.ru.
Yeah.
.ru.
Yeah. That's it.
I'm a big fan of the FSB. We go way, way back.
So, they advertise on social media. They let people know, hey, you want to become a big scary hacker and you want to go threaten people for money? Come rent the botnet. Right? They made over $1 million renting their botnet. And the stunt hacking that they did made themselves a household name. They talk in the forums. They even give customer service. I mean, really good customer service from what we've seen. People are very pleased with, I gave them some Bitcoin and they went and attacked and I had problems because I couldn't even figure out how to do half of this. And they walked them through it. They actually walk people through how to buy a Bitcoin and how to put it in a wallet and how to transfer it so that they can stop getting attacked. This is the level of professional service that these guys are offering in the Darknet. So they do private offerings. It's super easy to use as a service, right? There's Lizard Squad's botnet right there for rent, $19.99, get you 1,200 seconds of DDoS, of extreme horsepower. They've been busted, right? And as you can see, there's their website address of where they were at, stressor.ru. The Shenron stressor. The VDOS crew, a couple of Israeli kids, they've been busted. $20 would get you a 216 gigabit DDoS botnet available for rent, right? $20. You could prove that you are, a digital badass, a hacker to be feared for only $20, and they go rent the botnet, they go attack somebody, and then they write them an email that says, you want me to take you offline forever, or you're going to pay me the 40,000 bucks, right? This goes back to the 419, you owe me a beer. The African hacking scheme. This goes back to the old days of you just get some kids and put them in an internet cafe and give them a little bit of pocket change, and now they can disrupt your business. They can make money doing it, and they can scare the daylights out of people when they start to look and they go, who are these Lizard Squad people? Who are these attackers? Custom services, right? 0.35 Bitcoins to hack an email. What would it look like if you had a political adversary and you wanted to hack into their email and you paid somebody just a fraction of a Bitcoin and then you dumped everything during the middle of their campaign? Do you think you could screw up an election? Right? When this advertisement was up there, Bitcoin was $1,000, right? For $350, do you think you could cause a bunch of damage for $350 hacking into email or paying somebody to do it? Jobs for hackers. So you say, I want to hire a hacker. Here's some of the bulletin boards of where people go to do this. This girl, Mia, she actually is doing the Craigslist in Darknet. She's like, I go to UC Davis and I need a grade change, right? She's like, I'll pay. I'll even give you tips, right? Here's my email address, I'll do an escrow. I'll put some Bitcoin in escrow. And when you break into the university and you change my grade, this is where you're going to get your money. So it's everything that you need. Right? It's totally available. It's so easy to use, customized solutions. DDoS as a service, botnet rental, right? 1.2 million devices, 115 gigabits, 0.12 Bitcoins per hour to rent the botnet. Malware, they'll do a 50-50 split with you on malware. So they'll write the malware, command and control servers, they'll host it, they'll do everything that you need to do. You just have to be the one that pushes the button. That's technically the illegal part. And they'll do a 50-50 split with you. It's everything that you need to become a criminal available right there at any point in time. They do hosting inside of their own forums. This is where people can pop up darknet marketplaces and tumble $1 billion in Bitcoin for money laundering. They'll do undisclosed exploits. They'll sell them to you for a certain amount of money. Right? Today that'd be about $50,000. When I took the slide, it was about $11,000. And of course, they'll do leaked data. So this is the Mirai botnet. This is what the rental cost was for the Mirai botnet. $4,600 for a week rent. These are free DDoS services that you can find on ClearNet. So in case you want to actually just test your own defenses to see if you're ready for it, you can attack yourself. It's good pen testing strategy. Right? Attack yourself. Break into your own infrastructure. I did a lot of red team work over the years, broken into a lot of places. I was principal architect, JP Chase, Washington Mutual, here in town. We used to break into stuff all the time to try to make the bank better, stronger, safer. Maybe this is where a freebooter might actually be of value. Attack yourself Saturday night, 2 o'clock in the morning, during your outage window. See how you do. Visa MasterCards for sale on Darknet. $16, high limit credit card. Rent a hacker. This guy, basically he's like, I have no morals. I'll do anything to anybody. Don't care. Nobody's ever going to find out. Let me know what you want me to do. Do you want me to destroy their company? He works cheap. What is it, €200 an hour? So taking a look at defenses, the reality check of this is that we're moving to the cloud. We've got things on premise. We have to think about our business, and then we have to account for people. And when we look at return, depending on who you talk to, what is that return on investment actually going to mean to them? Are you going to talk to somebody about mathematics? Are you going to talk to somebody about revenue per hour? Are you going to talk about risk? Are you going to talk about compliance? Are you going to talk about penalties and fines? So this is where human beings tend to fail in manual signatures. I've got a problem, I'm going to try to go and figure it out, I'm going to go try to tune my equipment, I'm going to try to fly the jumbo jet that runs the security products in my infrastructure, and at best, I might get it done in 30 minutes. If you're using automation, and you're using things that are doing machine learning, within seconds, it should know what's going on and it should be able to stop it. You have to move beyond this. You know, how much do you spend provisioning and over-provisioning your data centers for bad traffic? So Henry Ford was a great man. He brought automobiles to us. And I'm not trying to compare him to hackers because they're criminals and they all belong in jail, and hopefully more of us can do more work to, you know, stop that. But because they have more resources and more targets, you have to invest in automated adaptive security. You have to take a look at, how do I automate? How do I take multiple layers simultaneously and let the computer make the decision and get yourself out of the decision-making process? You have to decide to protect yourself and not look at a log file that says I have an incident and therefore I'm going to call my right-hand man, and then we're going to have a powwow in the meeting room real quick, and then we're going to make a decision of what we're going to do on what piece of technology and where we're going to do it. No. Automate. Move towards automation. The MIT paper about digital transformation talks in great depth about it, and if you want to be a digerati and compete in today's world, you have to move towards automation. So sometimes services are things that are going to really help you. Finding people that actually have a tremendous amount of talent can bring a lot of value to your organization. Make sure you have visibility, a lot of visibility. So if you're blind, if you don't know that you're being attacked, you're not even in the game anymore. You're done. So every second counts. That's my presentation. I thank you guys so much for coming here tonight.
Thank you, David. At this point, I'm going to ask the speakers to come sit over here in the chairs. And if anybody has a question, I'll ask you to make your way over to the microphone here, and we'll ask the audience, excuse me, the panelists.
Details on the Equifax.
Oh boy.
Can I go first on that?
Can you make it worse than it already is?
There is literally no possible way to make Equifax worse than it already is. This is really your line. We are 50-something-year-old hackers. We're 50-somethings, 40-somethings. My first computer was a PDP J1184. My dad brought one home, DEC OEM, so long time ago. No.
1974 for me.
79, right?
Started writing viruses in the early 80s.
Yeah. So here's the deal. The mindset of the people managing Equifax, your line, these guys need to retire. The idea that you can't patch because patching could break production is a very vintage 1980s, 1990s concept. Companies that develop patches are very good at ensuring that their patches don't make the cure worse than the disease. The argument that we cannot patch because if we patch, we'll break things is put to lie by Facebook's motto. Does anybody know what Facebook's motto is? They have it written everywhere. It says, move fast and break things. That's Facebook's motto. Equifax's motto is, please God, don't make us patch. So those people really did need to not retire. They needed to be fired. And The details are this. In March of last year, the Mozilla Foundation found a bug in a package called struts. And struts is a way to make web-based applications communicate better between the front end, the business logic, and the data in the back. That's what struts does. Simplest explanation. Certain configuration files for struts are based on XML. Certain communications between struts layers are based on this XML programming, kind of this configuration language format. They had a format in it called command. Command. Command equals command. The parser would literally execute the command. That bug has existed for 11 years. All of us in the security industry are humiliated that we didn't find such a cool and stupid, that would be great stunt hacking, right? Bringing down every single struts instance on the planet. Anyway.
You called it a bug.
It's a feature. It was a feature. You're exactly right.
Yeah, but admin for their South American information was egregious. You know, it goes beyond I should have patched. Now, you know, the companies that I've seen do it very well have interesting strategies. Some of them do code review, and they make sure that they do everything from a secure programming perspective that wouldn't even require them to have a web application firewall. And then they have a web application firewall from somebody in the Gartner Leaders Quadrant, and then they have another web application firewall living on a span port that actually can write into an API that can start to shim into Akamai, which is a 150,000 node cache network globally. And they can just start to kick users out, so they can't even enumerate more than one attack. They try one attack and they go, okay, that's it, we fingerprint you, you're just in the sin bin, bye. So if you try one attack, you don't get to try two attacks. You might use your whole 100,000 node botnet to try to go back and forth from attack to attack to attack until the whole botnet gets fingerprinted, and then the whole botnet is just blocked globally, automatically. Dave Cullinane, who is the CISO of eBay, who's a friend of mine, said that we help them stop 60 million attacks per day. This is people that do it fairly well. Multiple layers of technology simultaneously. You know, it's not just a matter of getting a checkbox and say, I have PCI compliance. Ta-da! I've passed my audit this year. That doesn't mean anything.
I just want to dive in real quickly here. What Equifax had was a system of actually anti-resilience. What they had built was something that they felt so nervous about patching that they didn't do it. And the argument, if any of you are on IT, you've heard this argument 100 times. Oh, no, we can't patch that. We can't, don't go poke at that. It might fall over dead. Well,
they spent millions on their web application firewalls.
Right.
Just didn't use them.
Yeah, so they produced something that was essentially anti-resilient. You compare that to somebody like, I'll use the example of Netflix. Chaos Monkey is one of the most brilliant inventions I have ever heard of. If you've not ever heard of this.
Simian Army.
Yeah, the entire Simian Army that they followed it with is interesting. The idea, if you haven't read about it before, is that you're all coding up Netflix and make it resilient, please. Oh, and you guys, you little group over here, you're coding up something that's going to go internally and go attack all of the Netflix stuff. Try to break it. And that's all sanctioned. So all of the rest of you who are trying to make it resilient, you're up against these folks.
You're up against math.
Exactly.
So you're up against math. So this is Professor Ted Lewis's book. It's called Bach's Sand Pile. Per Bach is a man who invented this concept of self-organizing criticalities. He teaches at MPS. And this should be required reading for anybody who wants to understand how things layer fragility to the point where you're like Equifax, and you're so fragile and so unstable that the idea of patching struts is anathema to your dubious business plan at best. So.
Well, and that's the thing, is that now that this has happened, their decision to patch is going to be made for them. They will automatically patch. They will automatically start to put virtual patching in place, even if it breaks the infrastructure. Part of the value that people bring forth when they talk about, we're going to bring you a positive security model, we're going to give you virtual patching, we're going to put things in line that may be using our intelligence, whether it's our big data intelligence, their big data intelligence platform, whoever it is that's gathering this information and crowdsourcing it around the world. We say we know what things are happening, and the 50 times per week that we actually assign a patch, we'll just go ahead and write the rules for you. You can call it a service if you want, but.
And this is like hippie punching with Equifax. We should really move off of this. They are so, the problem that Equifax claims to solve is actually solvable by means other than, Equifax is asking to protect you, to give them money to protect you from the problem they created. This is, and it's not just Equifax, TransUnion is guilty of this as well. This idea of using an immutable, permanent identifier for you as a human, and once that gets out, that is your authentication. This is broken. This is 1940s thinking. This is, operations research has solved this problem in the 1940s. Their business model is predicated on it. The concept of credit scores, that's philosophy. We won't talk about that.
So in India.
Yeah. Would you mind if we moved on to the next question?
Sure.
It would be terrific here.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks a lot.
I want to build on the Equifax case a little bit. No, but I mean, one of your comments was, as the potential victims of attacks, our enterprises have to think very differently. We have to change our culture. We have to become more proactive. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on maybe the way, or one way to begin changing that culture is to change regulation of these enterprises that are potentially, like Equifax, causing these breaches and apparently suffering no consequences. Okay. These people have not been fired, they've not been prosecuted, and Equifax is not suffering really at all. I go back to the Ed Snowden breach. The director of the NSA was given full retirement after Ed Snowden walked out with half of the secrets of the NSA. There are never any consequences.
Admiral Rogers is still in charge.
He is.
But yeah, but it's, yeah.
But the guy that was in charge at the time retired.
You poked all three of the bears, so we're all probably going to want to We've all the three of us at least, have all been in this industry a long time. We've watched everything go from zero regulation to, in some industries, very high degrees of regulation. And I would challenge you to take a look at some of those highly regulated industries and show that regulation has had any positive effect in reducing their breach, in reducing the effects of breach, in reducing the impacts of what happens when they're breached. I'll give them a little bit of a break here and say that while they were patching and doing better and maybe getting better because of regulation, the threat model increased exponentially.
True. However, I've written a lot about the High-Tech Act, and I've talked a bit about it today. And one of the things that we're really very engaged in, I live in New Delhi half the year, so I spent a lot of time with the Indian government. I spent a lot of time with Tech Mahindra and Tata and Cognizant and Wipro and a number of these organizations that work across the European Union, and they work here in the United States. And GDPR is the European Union's answer to data protection and data privacy, and it goes into effect May 25th, 2018. And it even goes to the point where it says that cookies and targeted advertising, people have to opt in, and that they're so serious about protecting the identity and information of European Union citizens that they say that there could be a 20 million euro fine for violations or 4% of your global gross profits, whichever is higher. And the United States Federal Trade Commission is going to be the enforcement for the European Union in enforcing GDPR. So if a $6 million fine to a children's hospital in Dallas isn't enough to shake your CISO and your CEO and say, hey, you might want to think about this, I think that potentially The first couple of years is going to be a slow start for GDPR, but I can tell you unequivocally from what I see from folks that are doing a lot of data processing, they've already assigned DPOs in most of these tech companies in India, and they already are taking it very seriously, because to look at international sanctions for violation or failure to pay the fines is something that is strongly being talked about in the legalese circles. And whether or not there's going to be, whether it's a paper tiger or not, many don't want to take that risk. So, this is one way that people are starting to say you are going to start to behave yourself as a security company or in your security practice, or there's going to be strong penalties.
Allow me to whip this out.
Frank and Mike, I'll ask you to do it in about 2 minutes each to make sure we can get through the next questions.
Oh, no worries. This is way, way better than 2 minutes. There is no hope that that'll work. I mean, it'll try. They will try. They'll implement it. The benefit of being the CEO of a privately held corporation with a board of directors of friends and family is that I get to say exactly what I really feel. And exactly what I really... exactly what I really feel about this is this will not change until cultural mores change. There are certain mores that transcend cultures. They're universal. My favorite one is you don't urinate in the well. That one transcends all cultures, right? You don't take candy from strangers. That is one that transits a lot of cultures. Until we get, you don't click on the link you don't know, and you don't run other people's code in your browser, until that is so ingrained in our culture that it becomes second nature, a lot of problems are going to exist. The vigilante aspect of what this is going to start doing is it's going to be bad. There's going to be a janitor who's even more sociopathic than the janitor, and that's going to be bad, right? The regulations that are in place right now that have worked a little bit, tell me when my 2 minutes is done. PCI has lowered the bar of knuckleheads. I can remember people running credit card processing out of their basement on a Linksys, clearing $1 million worth of credit card transactions a month. Like the joker in his basement with an unpatched Linksys router, PCI made him go away. Writ large, though, internationally, I don't know, man. The United Nations, is not going to do this. Interpol is not really going to help us. I think that we need a cultural shift.
We'll pass it over to Mike.
Actually, no, I guess I'll have one very, very brief comment. Actually, the way that is written is it's voluntary compliance. You do not have to comply. You can actually let them sue you directly. So the only way the FTC has jurisdiction over you is if you say you are GDPR compliant. If you don't say that, then it's a free-for-all in the international legal scene. It's very weird.
Yeah, there's debate on that one.
Can I have anyone who wants to ask a question to move over to this side so I can get a sense of approximately how many questions we have? Excellent. All right, next question.
Thank you all very much for your time. I'm going to ask you guys, hopefully, a very friendly question to all of you. In light of this wonderful universe that you've all painted for us, help us understand, and our season theme here is press on. We want to paint a narrative that challenges of the world can be overcome. So as I'm sitting here looking at giants from Radware and Leviathan Security and critical infrastructure, prove to me, tout your business model, that you guys can stay ahead of these hackers. My company should invest in Radware. My company should be looking at what Leviathan is doing. Tell me it works. Tell me it can work. What does that machine learning look like? Can we stay ahead of this thing?
It doesn't work. I'll follow that up a little bit.
In 2 minutes, please, for each of you.
The answer is we've never in the history of humanity come up with protections that are 100%. It doesn't happen. I showed a picture of a wall that was falling apart. It's a few thousand years old, somewhere in that range. Maybe not. So, no. nothing is 100% effective. I'll give, and in part of my 2 minutes, I'll say what you really need to do is fundamentals. Do fundamental security properly. Patch your stuff. Build things that are secure. Be careful about how you enact these things. Our company will help you find, actually our company is built around the premise that bad things will happen, and we'll help you find it when it does and make it go away faster. It's not about making it all stop. That's not going to happen.
So in 2012, DARPA came to us and said, we would like to give you a challenge on a par with make an airplane that you can't see on radar. So the challenge was identify and report on the exploitation of unknown vulnerabilities in government networks. That's an impossible problem. That's what DARPA does. They hand you an impossible problem. They hope for the 80-20. What we did was we worked on the basic premise that failures of attacks are as interesting as real attacks and successful attacks. So what we do is we take attack failures at internet scale, we put them through an emulator, and we judge, without having virus signatures, we use heuristics, if that attack was benign or malicious. We call that a black swan. A black swan event is very, very valuable to an infrastructure, an IT infrastructure, an IT enterprise. It tells them what they need to fix. It tells them they dodged a bullet. It tells them they might not have something exactly right in their network. And it tells them that something went wrong. And the reason that your toaster doesn't kill you, and the reason that airplanes don't fall out of the sky on a regular basis, is that UL understands every deadly failure mode a toaster has. And the NTSB, when a plane falls out of the sky, they rent a warehouse and they put it back together, and they don't rest until they tell you why the plane fell out of the sky. What Leviathan does is we tell you why your software failed. Bugs in software are all security bugs. All bugs are security bugs. That's not my comment. That's this guy, Theo Durat. He's a pretty smart cat. Okay, having said that, that's a black swan. There's gray swans. Something went wrong in your network, and it's just weird. Someone was torrenting in a .mil domain. That's weird. You're not allowed to torrent porn on a military base. That's a problem. We call that a gray swan, because that wasn't a failed attack. That was just a failure. The torrent client failed. Now that's a little piece of data. Then there's swans. A swan is just something went wrong. Something in your network went wrong. If you collect enough swans, you can answer this question. Is one given cohort of computers more likely to be successfully attacked than another given cohort of computers? And for those of you of an actuarial bent, that is the only mathematics available to us to make actuarial statements about who to insure and what risk to not insure, what risk to mitigate and what risk to bear. We have no rigor, right? Failure analysis at scale will improve software. It is demonstrably done so at Microsoft. So that's why you should invest in, we're not taking money, but if we were taking money, that's why you should invest in us. There are things to do that are novel, and we won that DARPA challenge. 30 guys in Seattle beat Lockheed Martin, so that's pretty good.
So where I think that we're unique is that we do manage services for our offerings. We crunch about 500 terabytes of raw data from 15 million endpoints per year. We manage 65% of the world's stock exchanges, financial institutions. We're in 7 out of 10 of the tier 1 backbone providers globally. We've had a pretty good success in market penetration, and we crowdsource our intelligence. Now, what that gives you is that if you wanted to, let's say, be PCI compliant and ISO 27017 compliant and a bunch of other compliance, we'll guarantee it. Doesn't mean that you're going to have a 100% chance that a 0 day isn't going to come out and there may not be some pain somewhere, but at least you're not going to get the fines for being egregiously negligent. We're going to make sure that as 0 days are found, that it gets patched. We patch over 500 times a week based on the data that we get. We get all the log file information from Cisco and Accenture and P&B Baribas. A lot of people give us data. We're involved with CERT India. We're in front of the UID, which is the Aadhaar database in India, which is fairly substantial. It's biometric and social security numbers all put together, right? It's not just social security information, it's now biometrics, right? One of the largest PII databases in the world. People are very concerned about this, and the fact that if they want us to say we guarantee that you're going to meet compliance, we are patching. And we're going to automatically patch, and we're going to send our intelligence into the platforms, and they will even patch your firewalls for you, even if it's not ours. These are the ways where you look at automation and moving forward with agility. Is it a magic bullet? No, but it's certainly better than not patching. It's certainly better than I'm going to make a decision on whether or not I'm going to put security in place. Oh, there's this bad thing out there. Oh, Wannacry came out. Oh, have we patched Wannacry yet? Have we patched? Hey, well, let's talk about Wannacry. Let's all run around. Did we patch Wannacry? What are we going to do? Let's check our routers. You know, you're not going to have that question anymore, right? This is the point that you can get to, whether it's with us or whether it's somebody else. You know, there are plenty of other companies out there that do excellent security practices, and that's what really you should be doing, is using an excellent security practice and getting the human decision-making out of the equation.
Next question.
Hi. I wanted to ask you guys to elaborate a little bit more about defense against DDoS attacks, because I don't have a lot of experience in this field beyond what I've learned here today and just reading some articles and stuff, but it seems like a very different type of thing to defend against than like making yourself hack-proof, you know? Like it's, yeah. They're overwhelming you. So like what should, like I do have experience with not being able to play Xbox with my friends because they took that down. So like what should Microsoft or Sony or, you know, these different companies should do? What should they have done? What can they do to prevent things like DDoS attacks? Okay, so first and foremost, our hardware does 400 million packets per second of challenge on network, HTTP, DNS, and we can do it SSL asymmetrically, patented. But beyond that, we have a 3.5 terabit scrubbing network globally so that we can actually announce people's IP addresses all over the world and start to pull it into our data centers like it's SuperNAP in Las Vegas, or Switch, which is the biggest bandwidth aggregator in the world. So we can cross-connect companies like eBay and PayPal and folks like that and just go, oh, you're under attack, let's put a 160 gig sledgehammer in place. And then if it's even bigger than 160 gigs, then we'll go ahead and announce it globally. Akamai has standardized all of their data centers for network-level DDoS on our hardware. So you could consume, if you were a small user and you say, I just want to have a website in AWS or Microsoft Azure or in some cloud provider and I don't want my website going offline, you could sign up for a service that says, we'll front end you, we'll even help you become PCI compliant, we'll protect you, and in the event of an attack, don't even worry about it. But if you're flying your own ship and let's say you're a large financial institution, you could put our hardware in the top of rack that could do extremely high speed SSL where we don't look at your payload, that's part of the patent, and we can actually deal with SSL-based attacks and asymmetric SSL-based attacks, and we can go in and actually fingerprint users very quickly and then block them off of this infrastructure. There are other players that play in this space. Frost & Sullivan just awarded us as the best provider in the world for doing this, so we're kind of proud of that. But essentially, you have to partner up with somebody that has a big, monstrous scrubbing network, and our 3.5 terabits is sitting on tier 1 transit backbone providers. We're not sitting on, you know, subpar, slower carriers. It's a very high-speed environment, and this is why we have enjoyed having the majority of the financial institutions and stock exchanges. Okay. That's how you deal with it.
What's the technical?
Or he finds them and punches them.
Yeah. What's the technical level of folks in this audience? Is there a general sense that, so that every single thing he said is true, right? It is. But every single thing he said is part of an arms race, which is also true. So there are agreements between people who carry traffic. They're basically called peering agreements, basically. So I promise to peer your traffic if you're well-behaved. I'm AT&T. I'll peer your traffic if you behave, et cetera. There are hard power and soft power solutions to this problem. A hard power solution to this problem is to say that we can enforce peering agreements with the full might of the United States, which is an awesome and dangerous thing to do. but it could be done. We can enforce peering of traffic as a national interest. No one has ever said peering traffic is in the critical national interest in diplomatic speak of the United States government. The day you hear someone at the deputy or secretary of state level say, these peering agreements are in our critical interest, you're going to know that, can I curse? Shit just got real. Like if you hear the Secretary of State say that, then it's real. Until it becomes really real, there is every single solution he said works, but it will ultimately be an arms race. I'm actually talking to Paul Vixie next week, right? We're going to talk about fighting the long defeat. Like that's what we call it. We call it fighting the long defeat. So, and Paul Vixie basically is the guy who invented DNS, which translates all the numbers to dub-dub-dubs, right? Smart cat.
Mike, did you want to weigh in quickly? We have one more question.
Very briefly, since I don't really play in that space, the level that you guys do, the only way to not get shot is to not be there when the bullet arrives. And that is a lot of what you're talking about. I can denial of service your driveway by calling 15 friends. It's just going to happen unless you're able to scrape it off before it ever arrives. Those are the only, and both of your strategies actually reflect that.
Last question.
Good evening, and thank you again for all attending today. My question is really around workforce training and some of the opportunities that might be available to those in the audience that might not be as technical, but they're interested in learning about getting into cybersecurity. So as part of MIT Enterprise Forum is trying to encourage people to get involved in these types of innovation and, as Ben had mentioned, to press on and figure out how do we address some of these challenges. And then, of course, being here at Seattle University, we're seeing today that you could be a music major and be in charge of some of these companies that are running these. So with that, I just want to get your advice on, for anyone here in the audience or watching via live stream, what would you recommend in terms of the next step if they want to get, take the path of getting into cybersecurity or working at companies like yours and to help address some of these things?
So are we saying current students at MIT or people in general?
And just anyone in general, because there's definitely from what you've presented today, there seems to be a huge need for people to help mitigate some of these and to be able to respond to these. And are there enough people here in the U.S., North America, or elsewhere to help support some of these efforts?
The board of directors of Google asked us to do a study on the scarcity of computer security personnel. It's available. You could just search for it. And we found that there's negative unemployment in the information security field. That means that there are people holding more than one job. Yeah, there's negative unemployment in information security. The lack of trained professionals is gargantuan. It's growing yearly. Starting salaries are 6 figures for children, kids coming out of college. In order to get a job in information security, I think you need to be, you should probably have a computer science degree. And I would want to do something about the music degree. The best hacker I've ever met, Peter Zadko, Mudge, has his PhD in music theory from the Berklee College of Music in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And he's one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. So I don't hold the music degree. And my last grade of formal education was 9th grade. In a Jesuit high school before Chase Manhattan Bank insisted my parents emancipate me so I could go write programs for them. So don't buy too much with the cert. I know this is an MIT thing, but I think a fundamental background in computer science helps.
Well, a degree from MIT goes a long way, I got to tell you that. Yes. People don't even think twice about hiring you. The thing is there's a lot of people out there that are very talented and they have a passion for it. And if you develop a passion for it or even an interest in it, you can go and find things that are informative. And our authorship is at about 500,000 unique visitors per month at our blog. And we're not talking about our products. We're talking about real interesting things, whether it's blockchain or GDPR or ways of looking at attacks and attack surfaces, getting the education, whether it be free, whether it be through iTunes University or through a university, showing a passion for it is usually what happens to help people out. Here in Seattle, Costco has a lot of people in their IT department that have been there for 25 years. They started in the warehouse, stocking shelves, and then they kind of moved up a little bit and they said, oh, you kind of like computers, well, what do you want to do? There's organizations that will actually help and groom that in their people and try to maintain their people. I've seen some of the most loyal employees in the Northwest actually working at Costco here because they've got a talented group of people and they train their people and they care about them. If you have the capability of working for a company that says, hey, I see something in you, you want to learn about computers, I'll pay for your education. That's another way to go. It's a friendly and easy way to go. I know Nordstrom and a number of other organizations here in town really foster that kind of environment, and I think that's what companies need to do to be able to develop the talent that they're going to need for the future, is to say, who can we look at along our employees and say, hey, are you done being a bank teller? What do you think about, working on computers? We'll pay you more, right? Do their eyes light up or do they not light up, right? It's pretty easy. Recruit from the inside.
I can support that directly, actually. I'll say, and I'm going to mention another institution because I do the teaching for that institution. I've had both Nordstrom and Costco employees take my class. I've taught in 3, now about to be 4 different master's programs at the University of Washington in cybersecurity, and more interestingly for this discussion, maybe a certificate program that's about a year long for professionals who are trying to make that bridge, who are trying to make that change from whatever it was they were doing into cybersecurity. It's one of the most successful certificate programs that the University of Washington has ever produced. It's, the online version has had something like 80,000 views. We've done it for 14 years. We had to expand into 2 separate classes and so on and so forth. It's very popular because of what you're talking about, because growing that talent inside is the way. I do want to go just a little bit down a path, though, of what it takes. And that is, this is just my general opinion. I do a lecture that none of you are going to be subjected to today because it takes an hour. And the hour lecture is, here's every single thing that happens when you click on a link. It takes an hour. And I do that in a lot of different venues. I do that in a venue where I'm trying to explain to people wanting to do information security, here's the realm of things you need to understand in order to even begin in information security. And it's not to scare folks off, because at the end of that lecture, a third of the audience is excited. Like, I didn't know all that. That's really cool. About a third of that lecture is DNS.
Can I tell you what the Army's doing?
We're bumping up on time. Could you do it in about 30 seconds?
When I tell you the name, you're going to want me to describe it. It's called the Unicorn Farm, right? Because you can't breed unicorns, and they're magical, and you have to find them. So what the Army does is they have a completely comprehensive database of every single member of the armed forces. And they use that database to select people. And they give them, and you know who was instrumental in this? Jason Crabtree, a mutual friend. The Unicorn Farm is in Georgia. And they find the unicorns, they bring them to Georgia, and they train them by the best people in the world. And they find them based on criteria that I probably shouldn't discuss, right? They have their own criteria. And it's a special thing. I think it could work for huge organizations. So a Boeing, it might work for. It would maybe work for truly tremendous organizations to make their own unicorn farm, not unlike how you described Costco and Nordstrom. I just love the name.
Well, this is a great discussion because, like I said at the beginning, the main thing that we're trying to do here is educate and inspire people. And if there are any resources that you guys have that you can pass off to us privately, we'd be happy to share them. We want to keep the conversation going. I think there's a lot of really interesting points that were brought out tonight. So check out our social media channels. We're going to be keeping that going. And I definitely want